Meet Tenny, the self-proclaimed queen of social media, who can scroll, like, and gossip faster than a Formula One car on turbo mode. While her phone never leaves her hand, some say it's permanently glued. Her poor child and husband are left wondering if they should start tagging her in their daily lives just to get her attention. Tenny doesn't just love gossip, she lives it, creates it, and sometimes even stars in it without knowing. Basically, if drama were an Olympic sport, she had already have a gold medal, a sponsorship deal, and a viral hashtag. But in the end, after all the hashtags, likes, and endless chatter, Tenny realized that life is bigger than trending news, that true family, love, and reconnections doesn't need Wi-Fi to go viral. Tenny was a young mother living on a bright, bustling street in Lagos. From the outside, her life looked picture perfect. The street was lined with colorful flowers and tidy little shops, and neighbors often greeted one another with warm smiles each morning. But inside Tenny's home, chaos was brewing alongside the morning's pap. On this particular morning, Tenny's eyes were glued to her smartphone screen as usual. She scrolled through her social media feed with the concentration of a cat stalking a mouse, completely absorbed. Meanwhile, her 2-year-old son, Femi, sat on the floor in the living room, tugging at the leg of her trousers. The little boy's face was scrunched in frustration as he tried to get his mother's attention. "Mama, Mama," Femi babbled, holding up a toy car that he wanted her mother to fix. The toddler's voice was sweet but insistent. Still, Tenny barely glanced down. "1 second, Femi," she mumbled, thumbs tapping furiously to type a comment on a funny video she was watching. She chuckled aloud at her phone screen, oblivious to the fact that Femi was now tottering toward the kitchen unsupervised. In the kitchen, a pot of stew was simmering on the stove, or rather, it was supposed to be simmering. In reality, it had started to boil over, and wisps of smoke were curling from the pot's edges, but Tenny hadn't noticed the smell of something beginning to burn. She was too busy watching an Instagram gossip reel, eyes shining with interest as the drama unfolded on the tiny screen. From the bedroom, her husband, Ola, emerged, dressed for work. Adjusting his knit shirt, Ola was a gentle, patient man, but lately, his patience had been wearing thin. He immediately caught a whiff of the burning stew. A frown crossed his face as he hurried into the kitchen. "Tenny, the stew!" Ola exclaimed, quickly switching off the stove burner. He moved the pot aside with a pot holder, fanning the smoke. A sharp, charred scent filled the air. The stew was sticking to the bottom of the pot in a blackened mess. Tenny finally looked up from her phone, sniffing the air. "Oh, the stew," she said softly, realizing what happened. She hustled into the kitchen, still clutching her phone in one hand. I got distracted," she admitted sheepishly, waving the phone as if that explained everything. Ola turned to his wife with a disapproving look. "Distracted? Again?" he said, trying to keep his voice calm but unable to hide his frustration. "You were on that phone again, weren't you?" Tenny pouted and set her phone face down on the counter, finally freeing her hand to find a ladle. She poked at the stew, which was now more like a sticky burnt paste. "It was just for a moment. I was checking something important." "Important?" Ola echoed. He lifted an eyebrow. "So an Instagram gossip blog is what you call important? The food is burnt, Tenny. This is the third time this week." He pointed at the blackened stew. Tenny winced. Now that he said it out loud, it did sound bad. "I'm sorry," she muttered, sighing as she realized they would have to do with bread for breakfast instead. She opened the windows to let out the smoke, feeling embarrassed. Little Femi stood by the kitchen door, watching his parents with big innocent eyes. His toy car was still clutched in his tiny hand. The boy looked from his father to his mother, sensing the tension. He scrunched up his face like he might cry. Ola noticed his son's distress and softened his tone. Stooping down to pick Femi up, he bounced the toddler gently on his hip. "Hey, champ, it's okay," he called, rubbing Femi's back. Then he looked at Tenny with concern rather than anger. "Tenny, this can't continue. You are barely paying attention to Femi these days, or to anything for that matter." "I do pay attention," Tenny protested, though her voice lacked conviction. She knew Ola had a point. Only yesterday, she had been so absorbed in a viral comedy skit on her phone that she didn't notice Femi scribbling on the living room wall with crayon until he had covered a whole patch with loops. The day before that, she had missed 2 turns driving home because she was trying to listen to a live stream on her phone, earning a scolding from an angry bus driver she cut off in traffic. And just this morning, Femi had nearly put a pebble in his mouth from the garden while she was busy texting. Ola had caught him in time, not her. Ola gently set Femi down, and the toddler toddled over to the corner where his toys were, seemingly content now that there wasn't shouting. Ola then stepped closer to Tenny. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know the phone is entertaining, but Femi is our child. He needs you present, and I need my wife present too." Tenny swallowed and nodded. "You are right," she considered quietly. She did not meet his eyes because shame was creeping up on her. She truly loved her son and her husband, but it was so tempting to lose herself in the endless stream of fun videos, gossip news, and chats on her phone. Sometimes, she just forgot how long she had been scrolling. Ola gave her a small encouraging smile. "I'm not saying you can't use your phone, but everything has its time and place. When you are cooking, cook. When you are with Femi, pay attention to him, not Instagram." He had said similar things before, and each time Tenny had agreed in the moment, but soon enough she would slip back into her old habits. She always meant to do better, but then an alert would pop up on her screen about some juicy celebrity scandal, or a friend would send a funny meme and she would get pulled in like metal to a magnet. As if on cue, Tenny's phone buzzed on the counter. Her eyes darted to it. A new message notification lit up the screen. She bit her lip, resisting the urge to grab it. Ola's hand was still on her shoulder. He noticed her glance. He let out a sigh and removed his hand, stepping away. "I had to go to work," he said, sounding tired. He picked up his briefcase from the kitchen table. "Please, just try to be more present today. For Femi's sake, if not for mine, Tenny nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Of course, I promise I will." She meant it when she said it. At least, part of her did. She reached out to ruffle Femi's soft curls as the little boy rolled his toy car on the floor. "Mommy will pay attention, okay? We'll have a fun day." Femi looked up at her with a bright grin at the sound of fun day, and he clapped his tiny hands. "Fun day," he echoed in his baby voice, though it sounded more like fun day, which made both his parents laugh. Ola crunched to kiss Femi's forehead and then gave Tenny a quick peck on the cheek. "All right, bye-bye." "Bye, Femi. Be good, okay?" "Bye," Femi squealed, waving his little hand. Tenny walked Ola to the door, carrying Femi on her hip now. They watched Ola join the flow of neighbors heading out to work. The Lagos sun was already bright over the street. Vendors were arranging their wares, and a gentle breeze rustled the trees that lined their avenue. It truly was a beautiful street, full of life and color. As soon as Ola was out of sight, Tenny let Femi down and exhaled. The morning had been a little tense. She decided that before she starts any chores or activities, she deserved a short break to relax her nerves. "Just a few minutes on my phone," she told herself, "to clear my head." She picked up Femi's favorite ball from a corner and handed it to him. "Here, Play with this, Femi. Mommy will watch you from here, she said. Technically, it wasn't a lie. She intended to keep an eye on him. They were now back in the living room, which opened into a small yard. The front door was still open, showing the outside world bustling by. But a little child-safe gate barred Femi from toddling off the porch. Satisfied that her son was safe enough in the living room, Tenny sank into the sofa, pulled out her phone and unlocked it. The screen glowed, and immediately a flood of notifications greeted her. Messages from her friends, new posts from those gossip pages, some Instagram's live story had just started. It was like being welcomed by a crowd of noisy, excited people all at once, and Tenny eagerly plunged into that virtual crowd. Time slipped away quickly, like a thief tiptoeing through a market. 5 minutes of scrolling turned into 10, 10 turned into 20. Little Femi played quietly with his ball at first, tossing it in the air and catching it, babbling to himself. When he got bored, he toddled around the living room, pushing his toy car and giggling whenever it bumped into furniture. He tried once or twice to get his mother's attention. At one point, he waddled to the couch and plopped his toy car onto Tenny's lap, looking up at her expectantly. Nice car, Tenny murmured, not really seeing it as her thumb flicked the screen to scroll to the next funny video. She gave the toy a half-hearted push back to Femi, eyes never leaving the phone. A short while later, a loud clatter came from the kitchen. Femi had sneaked off and pulled a pot from a low cabinet onto the floor. The bang jolted Tenny's focus away from her phone. She jumped up from the couch. "Femi!" she called, panicked by the noise. She found Femi in the kitchen, standing amidst a few scattered pots and pans, looking startled by the loud crash he had caused. The toddler's eyes were wide and shiny, and his lower lip quivered as if he might cry from the shock of the noise. "Oh my goodness," Tenny muttered, relief flooding her as she saw he was unhurt. She quickly scooped Femi up into her arms, patting his back. "It's okay, baby. You scared yourself, eh? Sorry." She gently bounced him to soothe him. Meanwhile, she kicked the falling pot aside carefully. The kitchen still bore the traces of the morning chaos, the burnt stew pot in the sink, a few smokes of soot on the stove. She sighed, feeling guilty. This little accident was her fault too. If she had been paying attention, she might have noticed Femi wandering off. In her mind, she heard her husband's voice. "Please, try to be present today." And for a moment, Tenny resolved to do exactly that. No more phone for now, she thought. She carried Femi back to the living room, keeping him in her lap and away from further kitchen adventures. She started telling him a nursery rhyme to keep him entertained. Femi giggled and clapped as his mother sang, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," and helped him make diamond shapes with his tiny fingers. But after just a short while, as Femi became engrossed in a toy, Tenny felt the insistent pull of her phone again. It was lying there on the couch, screen black now, silently waiting. Maybe I should check if anyone responded to my comments, she rationalized to herself. She had posted a witty remark on that gossip reel earlier. I was curious if it was getting likes. Surely just a quick peek wouldn't hurt, right? They say you cannot chase two rats at the same time without losing one. And Tenny was trying to chase motherhood and online gossip simultaneously. As one humorous proverb goes, a watched pot never boils, but an unwatched pot will burn to charcoal. Tenny had already donated one burnt pot to that proverb today, and you would think it was lesson enough, but old habits die hard. Before she knew it, Tenny's nose was back in her phone screen. The world around her faded once more. Little Femi, after stacking some toy blocks, turned to show his mother his impressive tower, only to find her staring at the flat glowing thing again. Femi frowned, waddled over, and tugged at the hem of her skirt. "Mama, tower," he said proudly, pointing at the stack of blocks he built. "Very good," Tenny replied absently, offering a vague smile in the general direction of the blocks. She hadn't really looked. On her screen, a hilarious meme had popped up and she was already typing LOL along with a string of laughing emojis in response to a friend's message. She missed the crestfallen look on Femi's face when he realized his mother hadn't actually seen his toy block masterpiece. Soon, lunchtime approached. The sun climbed high, and a golden light filtered in through the curtains. Femi's stomach rumbled, and he began to get fussy, rubbing his eyes. Tenny realized it was time to feed him and put him down for a short nap. Reluctantly, tearing herself away from her phone, she made Femi a quick snack of mashed yams and vegetables. Thankfully, it didn't require cooking, just warming, so there was no risk of another burnt meal. While feeding him in his high chair, she managed to keep her phone in one hand, reading an article with the volume muted so Ola wouldn't hear if he happened to call. He had lectured her before about using a phone while feeding Femi. Just this one article, she told herself as her fingers scrolled the screen beside the spoonfuls she brought to Femi's mouth. Multitasking seemed to be her modus operandi, even when she promised herself it wouldn't be. After lunch, Femi's eyelids were dropping. He napped for about an hour, giving Tenny some free time. Instead of using it to catch up on housework or rest herself, she eagerly launched back into her online world. Lying on the couch, one leg dangling off the edge lazily as she giggled at comedic skits and commented on friends' posts. It was her guilty pleasure, and it felt so harmless as long as Femi was asleep and safe in his crib. What was the harm, right? When Femi awoke in the afternoon, Tenny decided it would be good for both of them to get some fresh air. Also, they were low on a few groceries. She figured she could walk down the street to a nearby shop to pick up bread and fruits. It would be a short walk, nothing too demanding for Femi. In fact, he loved toddling around outside. She got both of them ready. She tied a colorful scarf around her hair, slipped on a comfortable pair of sandals, and put a little sun hat on Femi's head to shield him from the intense afternoon sun. The toddler was excited to go out, bouncing on his feet at the door. With her paws over one shoulder and phone already in hand, Tenny held Femi's tiny hand and stepped out onto the lively Lagos street. Outside, the afternoon was bright and the street buzzed with typical Lagos energy. Vendors on the roadside displayed ripe plantains, tomatoes and vegetables under large umbrellas to shade them from the sun. A group of children chased an old tire at the far end of the street, laughing. Okada riders, motorbike taxis waved through a narrow road, honking to announce their presence as pedestrians carefully made way. Despite the activity, the street was well kept and lively, giving it a cheerful, almost beautiful aura amid the city's chaos. Tenny walked along, one hand holding little Femi's hand and the other, of course, holding her phone. Her attention was drifting back to the screen. She opened WhatsApp to see dozens of new messages from her friend's gossip group chat named Amiibo International. Immediately, her thumb began flying across the screen to catch up on the latest juicy gist her friends were sharing. As they passed by Mama Ada's vegetable store, the older woman waved a leafy bunch of ugu pumpkin leaves in greeting. "Tenny, come buy fresh veggie oh," Mama Ada called out. Tenny looked up briefly from her phone and gave the vegetable seller a distracted smile. "Not today, Mama Ada, later, eh?" she replied, not slowing her pace. She didn't notice the amused shake of the old woman's head as she walked past. Mama Ada muttered under her breath, "Phone, phone, phone, every time phone. Oh." They continued on, and Tenny became engrossed in a voice note one of her friends had sent. A dramatic reenactment of a celebrity fight that happened online the night before. Tenny giggled as she listened, forgetting she was on a public street and not in her living room. Little Femi trotted along at her side, his short legs working hard to keep up. He was curious about everything: the bright red tomatoes at a store they passed, the stray dog dozing under a parked car, the noisy group kids playing tag by the corner. But Tenny's gaze stayed glued to her phone screen. Suddenly, the phone rang in her hand, buzzing insistently. She saw the caller ID, her friend Eno, one of her main gossip partners. Tenny's face lit up. "Ah, Eno," she exclaimed and answered the call at once. "Eno, my sister, I do," Tenny greeted in a lively tone, lapsing into a bit of pidgin English in her excitement. She automatically slowed her walking pace as the call began, her focus narrowing to the voice in her ear. Eno's voice crackled through. "Tenny, have you seen the video I dropped in the group? I nearly fell off my chair laughing." Tenny laughed loudly, oblivious to the looks of a few passerby. "Yes, so I just listened to your voice note. My dear, that our celebrity couple, they have no shame, fighting in public like goats over yam peels." Eno burst into laughter on the other end. "I tell you, my sister, imagine the disgrace." As Tenny chatted and laughed, she barely watched where she was going. Femi was still holding her hand, but she wasn't truly paying attention to him or the path. At one point, he stumbled over a bump in the sidewalk and whimpered, "Mama," as he nearly fell. Tenny simply tightened her grip on his hand so he wouldn't topple, still not looking down. A young woman, coming the opposite way, had to sidestep quickly to avoid a collision with Tenny. "Which way you're going?" the woman scolded, but Tenny was too absorbed in her call to notice. On the phone, Eno continued animatedly. "And have you heard? They say she is filing for divorce. It's all over Instagram this afternoon." "What? Really?" Tenny gasped, coming to a halt in shock. She let go of Femi's hand, raising her free hand in a dramatic gesture as if Eno were in front of her. "No, I haven't seen that yet. Give me the gist, quick." At that point, Femi, now released from his mother's hold, wobbled a step away to regain balance. They were near the entrance of a small electronics shop, and a colorful poster on the wall caught his eye. A cartoon puppy advertising phone's credit. "Doggy," Femi squealed, pointing excitedly at the poster. But Tenny didn't hear him. She had turned slightly away, one hand holding the phone to her ear, the other gesturing as she reacted to Eno's scandalous update. Femi, enthralled by the doggy poster, took a couple of steps toward it, still only a foot from his mother. It was in this split second, Tenny's attention fully elsewhere and Femi standing on his own, that a figure approached swiftly from down the street. A woman draped in a faded Ankara dress and headscarf moved with purpose. This was Peculiar, the strange woman. She had been lingering by a kiosk a moment earlier, eyes discreetly tracking Tenny and Femi. Peculiar's heart pounded with determination and fear. She clutched a small brown calabash, partially hidden in the folds of her dress. She had chosen her target, a distracted mother and her innocent child. The Baba's instructions were clear. Peculiar reminded herself, find a careless mother, steal the brain of reasoning from her child, and bring it back in the calabash. It was a wicked task, and Peculiar still felt a pang of guilt, but the Baba had promised a generous reward, enough to solve many of her problems. She told herself this would be the first and last time she would ever do something like this. As Peculiar neared, she saw that Tenny was laughing at something on her call, not even glancing at her boy. The little one was pointing at a poster, oblivious too. Now or never, Peculiar thought, her mouth dry. She murmured a quick incantation under her breath, the words in Yoruba trembling on her tongue. In one smooth motion, Peculiar reached out and laid her palm atop Femi's head as she walked by. The motion was swift and oddly gentle. To any casual observer, it might have looked like a friendly pat or a dusting-off gesture. Under her breath, Peculiar whispered, "On this child's head, I seize his sense." At that instant, she felt a strange warmth in her palm, like a tiny spark The calabash tucked in her other arm vibrated faintly. A jolt of adrenaline shot through Peculiar. It seemed the charm had worked. She had taken whatever intangible essence she was meant to steal. Little Femi froze, a slight shudder passing through him. His bright eyes suddenly dimmed, his arm dropping slowly back to his side. At the spasm of heartbeat, the lively toddler became oddly still and quiet, as if in a daze. Peculiar didn't pause to see more. She removed her hand from the child's head and kept walking right past Tenny, who still had her back turned in conversation. A surge of relief and panic hit Peculiar simultaneously. It's done, she thought, hardly believing it. Now she needed to get away fast. But someone did notice. A few steps behind, another woman had been walking in the same direction and witnessed the scene. This was Gift, a neighbor from a nearby street, who recognized Tenny and her little boy. Gift had been about to call out a friendly greeting when she saw Peculiar's stealthy approach and that unnatural touch on Femi's head. Gift's mouth fell open in shock. She had heard stories of evil people steering children's destinies or senses with a mere touch, tales that were half-whispered warnings among mothers. To actually see something like that happen in front of her was surreal. When Femi's normally bubbly face went blank, Gift knew something was terribly wrong. Peculiar had already brushed past and quickened her pace up the road. Gift felt a surge of protective anger. She hurried forward to Tenny, grabbing her firmly. "Tenny," Gift said urgently. Startled, Tenny pulled the phone from her ear, annoyed at the interruption. She recognized Gift faintly, but was too absorbed to recall from where. "One moment, Eno," she murmured into the phone, then found out Gift. "Yes, can I help you?" Gift wasted no time. She pointed towards Peculiar, who was putting distance between herself and them. "That woman that just passed." She touched Femi's head. Gift exclaimed breathless. Tenny blinked in confusion. "What? Who?" She looked down at Femi in her other arm at last. He was unnaturally quiet, leaning limply against her leg. A stab of worry pricked her. This woman touched. "Why would anyone?" "I don't know why," Gift said, her voice tight with urgency. "But I saw it." She placed her hand on his head and said something. "Now look at Femi." Tenny crouched, turning Femi to face her. "Femi, baby, are you okay?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. The boy's usually lively eyes looked back at her, but they seemed unfocused. He didn't babble or smile. He just leaned his head on her shoulder as if suddenly exhausted or confused. Tenny's heart lurched. Femi wasn't crying or visibly hurt, but this sudden quietness was very unlike him. "What did the woman do to you?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Gift touched Femi's arm. "We can't let her get away," she said firmly. "Whatever she did, we'll sort it out. But first, we must catch her." She thrust her shopping basket into Femi's hand. "Hold this, I'll be right back." Before Tenny could respond, Gift had hitched up her skirt and taken off at a run down the street after Peculiar. "Hey, stop there!" Gift shouted, her voice ringing out above the street din. Peculiar glanced back and saw Gift sprinting towards her. Her stomach flipped. The jig was up. Without hesitation, Peculiar broke into a run. "Thief! Thief! Ole! Ole!" Gift began to yell at the top of her lungs, enlisting the street's unwritten code of justice. "Stop that woman! She stole something from the baby!" At the alarm of thief, the street sprang into action. People turned their heads toward the commotion. Two bus conductors, lounging by an empty duffel, jumped up, eager to give chase. Any excuse for action on a slow day. A fruit vendor stepped in Peculiar's path, forcing her to veer to the side. An Okada rider revved and moved his bike to block any escape along the road. Peculiar's sandals slapped on the pavement as she ran, panic lending her speed. But she was not a seasoned runner, and terror was clouding her movement. "Every day for the thief, one day for the owner," shouted one of the chasing bus conductors as he closed in. Peculiar's chest burned. She clutched the calabash tightly, desperate not to drop it as she darted around a corner. Just then, her foot caught in a small pothole on the road. With a cry, Peculiar stumbled and crashed to the ground, the calabash rolling out of her grip. In seconds, Gift and the two conductors were upon her. They grabbed her arms as Peculiar struggled feebly. "Leave me, I didn't steal anything," she howled, tears of fear in her eyes. "Then why you dey run? Why you dey run?" one conductor shot back, tightening his hold. The other had already snatched up the calabash from where it lay. He eyed it. It didn't look like a wallet or phone or anything that someone might steal. "What's in here?" he demanded, suspecting it might contain stolen goods. By now, a small crowd was gathering around the scene. Lagos crowds are quick to form when there is drama, and this was drama of peculiar sort. People shouted questions and suggestions. "Wetin she thief? Check her bag. Yay, make she no vanish o." Gift fixed Peculiar with a fierce glare. Bring her back," Gift said. "We have to take her back to the child's mother." She turned to the onlookers. "This woman did something to a baby boy. We need her back now." There were moments of shock and anger. No one had context, but harming a child was enough to rouse everyone's concern. A couple of men helped hoist Peculiar to her feet, holding her firmly by the arms. "You better confess now. Confess," one of them growled at the trembling woman. "I didn't do anything," Peculiar insisted, eyes darting around for any route to escape. There was none. She was surrounded. Gift took the calabash from the conductor's hand, feeling a cold dread as she did. She suspected what might be inside, but didn't dare open it yet. Instead, she led the procession, clutching the gourd in one hand and keeping the other hand on Peculiar's arm. They began marching back towards where Tenny stood, still holding Femi and Gift basket, her face stricken with worry. Tenny saw them coming, and her heart pounded in her chest. Peculiar was being dragged along by a crowd of people, with Gift at the front. Femi whimpered in her arms, disturbed by the noisy group heading their way. Within moments, the crowd and its captive reached Tenny. Gift immediately went to Tenny's side, placing a reassuring hand on her back. "We caught her," she said, a bit breathless. "This is the woman." Tenny stared at Peculiar, a fairly ordinary-looking woman, except for the wild, fearful look in her eyes at being cornered. Why did you touch my son?" Tenny asked, voice shaking with anger and fear. Peculiar clamped her lips shut, shaking her head. "I did nothing to him," she mumbled. Gift raised the calabash. "Then what's this?" "She put something of the baby in here, I suspect," the crowd murmured in intrigue and horror. An older man in the back exclaimed, "Ha! They do this kind thing? Stealing a child's sense or destiny?" Tenny felt dizzy. She tightened her hold on Femi, who was still listless in her arms, and for the first time noticed the truly odd change in her boy. It was like he was present physically but not fully there. Tears pricked her eyes. "Please," she begged Peculiar, stepping closer. "If you did something, anything, just don't do it. He's my only son, please." Peculiar avoided her gaze. I didn't." "Liar," snapped one of the young men holding her. "You better talk true now, before we decide to take justice into our hands." He raised a fist, and Peculiar flinched. "Easy," Gift said, though her voice was tight. "I've called the police," she added for Tenny's benefit. "They are on their way." At the mention of police, Peculiar's face blanched further. She knew in Nigeria, police meant serious trouble, possibly even more beatings in custody if the crowd alleged something awful. The circle of onlookers pressed closer, everyone eager to hear the confrontation. Tenny's tearful face, Femi's strange silence, and the sight of the calabash in Gift's hand all made for a dramatic table on Lagos Street. Gift stepped forward, holding up the gourd. "Open it," she demanded of Peculiar. "What's inside?" Peculiar shook her head violently. "No," she burst out, then clamped her mouth shut. "Then you did Take something, Gift fired back. She addressed those holding Peculiar. Hold her tight, don't let her move. Looking at Tenny, Gift said in a low voice, be ready. Whatever is inside here, it might be what she took from Femi. Tenny nodded uncertainly, wiping her eyes and kissed Femi's cheek. The boy blinked slowly, not reacting much, even to the raised voices around him. Gift pried at the small, wax-sealed stopper on the calabash. Peculiar began to sob. Don't open it, please, she begged, screaming, but strong arms kept her in place. As Gift managed to break the seal, a few people craned their necks to see. She moved the stopper and peered inside. The gourd wasn't empty. Inside was a small clump of something like grey cotton or wool and a faint, odd odor. It didn't look like much, certainly not like any tangible, stolen item one could understand. Gift frowned, unsure but trusting her gut. She held the open calabash up. What did you do to this child? She demanded of Peculiar one more time. Speak the truth now. Peculiar's whole body was shaking. She glanced around at the faces, the furious mother clutching her child, and realized there was no mercy coming from any direction. With the crowd pressing in and nowhere to run, Peculiar realized she had to confess or risk the mob's wrath. Everyone waited, breath held, for her answer. With the crowd closing in on all sides and no escape in sight, Peculiar knew the game was up. Her chest heaved with each breath, and tears streamed down her face. She tried to twist free of the strong hands holding her, but it was useless. The crowd's angry questions pelted her from every direction. She opened her mouth, grasping at anything to save herself. I only touched his head. I didn't steal anything, Peculiar cried out desperately. Her eyes darted from one fierce face to another. I'm not a thief, I swear. Then why you they run? Demanded one of the bus conductors, still gripping her arm. Innocent people know they run like that. He gave her a little shake for emphasis. Peculiar's voice faltered. I was scared. People were chasing me and shouting. Tell us the truth. Gift interjected sharply. She stood a few feet away, one arm protectively around Tenny's shoulder, as Tenny knelt on the ground clutching Femi. Gift's other hand still clutched the little calabash. What did you do to the child? What's in that gourd? Peculiar's gaze flickered to the calabash in Gift's hand. Her last hope of pretending innocence evaporated. Slowly she shook her head, sobbing. It was the Baba. He made me do it. It's my first time, I swear, she babbled. First time doing what? A man in the crowd barked. Speak clearly, woman. At the instant, Peculiar let out a wail. Her knees buckled, and the men holding her had to support her. The truth poured out in a rush. I took it. I took the boy's sense. His brain of reasoning. It's in the calabash. A collective gasp rose from the circle of people, even though some had guessed. Hearing her admit it was shocking. Tenny felt as if the ground tipped beneath her. She would have fallen if Gift's arms wasn't steadying her. You did what? Tenny whispered, voice barely audible. Her face was wet with fresh tears. I'm sorry, Peculiar sobbed. I didn't want to. It's the Baba that sent me. He pays for this kind of thing. I needed money. It's my first time, I swear it. I'm so sorry. She looked around wildly, but found no sympathy in the grin. Angry faces surrounding her. Outrage rippled through the onlookers. Abomination, someone spat. Wickedness, cried another. The woman in the back prayed aloud, thanking God the child was still alive. Tenny, meanwhile, was gazing at Femi's face through blood vision. Her baby boy was breathing, alive. But a light had gone out of him. He was staring blankly, barely responsive in her arms. It felt like a part of him was missing, and the woman claimed it was in that calabash. Tenny's sorrow and fear ignited into fury. How could you? How could you? She cried at Peculiar. He's just a baby. Give it back. Give my son back what you took. Gift, eyes flashing, stepped forward with determination. You heard the mother. Undo it now. Her voice was like thunder. Return what you stole from this innocent child. The crowd pressed in even tighter. Voices echoing Gift's demand. Yes, give it back. Fix the boy. If anything happens to that child, you are finished. Peculiar bobbed her head frantically. I'll return it, she cried. Just let me do it. Gift thrust the open calabash toward Peculiar, but did not place it in her hands. Do it right here, she ordered. Don't try any tricks. Peculiar nodded, tears still pouring down her cheeks. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself despite trembling violently. In a quavering voice, she began to chant in Yoruba, lifting her cuffed hands slightly as far as the men's grip would allow. The words stumbled out rapidly, a plea to reverse what had been done, to return what was taken so the child would not suffer. The air felt suddenly still. The onlookers fell quiet, many holding their breath. Tenny's heart hammered in her chest as she watched Peculiar murmur incantations and mixed up two motions with her fingers. Could this really work? Would her baby be himself again? After a tense half minute, Peculiar stopped chanting. It's done, she said weakly, opening her eyes. I returned it, please. I've undone it. She sagged in the men's hold, as if the effort had drained her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Femi, who had been limp and quiet, suddenly blinked rapidly. His little face crumpled, and he began to wail at the top of his lungs, a loud, hearty cry that cut through the silence. Never had Tenny been so overjoyed to hear her child cry. Femi! Oh, thank God! She exclaimed. His cry was strong and angry, the normal reaction of a frightened toddler, and the sweetest sound in the world to his mother. Tenny hugged him tightly, rocking him as he wailed. It's okay, I'm here, she soothed, though tears of joy streamed down her own cheeks. Femi squirmed and sobbed like his usual upset self, and Tenny couldn't stop smiling through her tears. A cheer actually went up among some of the crowd. A few people clapped or shouted hallelujah in relief. Gift wiped a tear from her eyes as well, smiling broadly. She gently touched Femi's cheek as Tenny cradled him, and the boy turned his head, reaching a hand towards Gift's shiny necklace. A sure sign his curiosity and awareness were back. It worked, Gift whispered, her relief immense. They backed away and carefully resealed the calabash, now essentially empty of its dark cargo. Peculiar let out a long shuddering sigh, sagging in defeat. It was over. Her horrible mission had failed, and she was caught. In a twisted way, even she seemed relieved the child was okay, though she feared what would become of her now. In the distance, the rising wail of a police siren cut through the air, growing louder as it approached the street. The authorities were on their way at last. Two ununiformed police officers pushed through the gathered crowd, which quickly parted to let them into the circle. One was a stern-looking sergeant with a stocky build, and the other a younger constable who seemed wide-eyed at the strange scene. They had clearly been expecting to break up a mob beating of a pickpocket or a petty thief, not this peculiar scenario of a child crying, a distraught mother, and talk of stolen senses. What's going on here? The sergeant backed, taking stock of the situation. He saw Peculiar on the ground, held by two men, and the relieved mother with her child clutched to her chest, the calabash on the floor. The suspected value of the stolen cents was in the hands of one of the bus conductors, who held it uncertainly. Gift stepped forward as a spokesperson. Officers, thank God you are here, she said, trying to sound calm. This woman, she pointed at Peculiar, did something very wicked. She used some charm on this child. Gift indicated Femi, who was in Tenny's arms, now whimpering softly after his big cry. She took this child's reasoning, put it in the calabash. Gift nodded toward the calabash. The younger officer looked confused at the mention of reasoning, but the sergeant's face remained stony. He had heard of such things before. Unbelievable as it sounded, there were cases of attempted rituals. All right, he said shortly. He moved to Peculiar, who was now slumped in the grip of the men holding her, her face streaked with tears. Madam, he addressed her in a firm tone. You are coming with us. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, he began, the standard caution. The constable produced a pair of handcuffs and clicked them onto Peculiar's wrist. She offered no resistance. She was far past the point of fighting back. As the officer secured her, she mumbled, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Perhaps to Tenny, perhaps to no one in particular. The sergeant took the calabash from the conductor, examining the sealed lid briefly. He then gestured to the constable, who led Peculiar towards their patrol van parked at the end of the street, its lights still flashing. Before following, the sergeant turned to Tenny and Gift. He saw Tenny's red, tear-swollen eyes and the way she clutched her baby protectively, softening his tone. He asked, Madam, is your boy all right? Tenny nodded shakily. Yes, officer. He's okay now. Thank you. He managed a small grateful smile at him, though she was still clearly rattled. The sergeant gave a cut, reassuring nod. Good. We will need a statement, but you can come by the station later or tomorrow. For now, take care of him. He fixed Tenny with a stern but not unkind look. And please, be more careful. Lagos isn't kind to children who aren't watched. Hold your child well, madam. Tenny's eyes dropped, shame coloring her cheeks. Yes, sir, I understand, she murmured. Thank you. With that, the sergeant moved off to join his partner. They guided a handcuffed Peculiar into the back of the van. A few onlookers hurled angry words at her as she ducked her head to avoid their eyes. In a moment, the van door slammed, and with a final whoop of the siren, the police vehicle pulled away. The crowd began dispersing, the excitement over. Some people were already on their phones recounting the incident to friends or posting on social media about the child thief who was caught on their street. At last, calm returned. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow as life on the street attempted to return to normal. Tenny stood there, still trembling slightly as the adrenaline subsided, holding Femi close. The little boy, now thoroughly exhausted by the day's event, had his head on her shoulder and was sucking his thumb. His eyes were half closed. He looked ready to doze off, safe in his mother's arms. Tenny turned to Gift, the woman who had saved her son. How could she possibly express her gratitude? Her voice quavered as she began. Auntie Gift, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my baby. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time tears of gratitude. Gift gave a modest wave of her hand. Thank God I was there, she replied sincerely. Anyone would have done the same. Tenny shook her head. Not everyone would chase a stranger and confront a mob for us. You are a blessing. I will never forget this. Gift smiled kindly. She reached out and gently stroked Femi's cheek. The toddler gave a tiny, tired smile in return. He's a sweet boy, Gift said. Then she looked Tenny in the eye, her expression turning serious. My dear, I have to tell you, you must be careful. You see how quickly something nearly happened because you weren't paying attention. Tenny nodded solemnly, guilt and remorse flooding her. I know. I was foolish. All because of this phone. She glanced down at the phone still clutched in her hand. She stuffed it into her pocket as if hiding a shameful thing. Gift placed a comforting hand on Tenny's shoulder. We all make mistakes, but as long as we learn from them, we can become better. She gave a small squeeze. That phone in your hand can be useful. Oh. It can connect you to people, give you information. But as I said, it can also destroy you if you let it control you. Tenny swallowed hard and nodded again. I understand. After what happened today, I understand very well. I nearly lost what was most precious to me because of that thing. Gil decided to drive the lesson home with a gentle proverb, hoping a touch of humor would make it stick. You know, they say if you tie a goat and go to sleep, by the time you wake up, the goat will have eaten your yam. She raised an eyebrow. You left your goat, your child, unattended while your eyes were on the phone. And see what almost happened. The yam nearly got stolen. Despite her sorrow, Tenny couldn't help a tiny smile at the imagery. That's true, she said softly. I won't let it happen again. Gift nodded, satisfied that Tenny was sincere. Good. Because truly, Mama no be for mouth though. Motherhood is not just a title, it's an action. It's not enough to say I'm a mother, but you have to live it every moment. Tenny felt those words like a light bulb turning on in her head. She hugged Femi a little tighter, and he snuggled into her, eyes closed. You're right. Mama no be for mouth, she echoed. I need to show it, not just say it. Gift's face softened into a warm smile. I know you will, my dear. She could see the transformation in Tenny's eyes already, a newfound determination and awareness. You have been given a second chance, and God willing, everything will be fine from now on. By now, the street was mostly back to its usual rhythm. A few neighbors had come by to pat Tenny on the back and offer relief that Femi was alright. They moved along. The sun was angling towards evening. Gift glanced at the sky and then at her basket, which Tenny still held in the crook of her arm. Ah, my bread and things, Gift exclaimed lightly. Let me take those. I should head home and feed my own family. They will be wondering where I am. Oh, of course, Tenny said, returning the basket to Gift. In all the chaos, she had forgotten she was holding it. Gift took the basket and gave Tenny one last kind look. You'll be all right, Tenny. Just remember what we talked about. I will, Tenny promised. She felt a surge of affection for this woman who not only saved her son, but also gave her the wisdom she had sorely needed. Thank you so much for everything. I will never forget it, Auntie Gift. With a final shared smile, the two women hugged briefly. Then, Gift adjusted her wrapper, picked up her basket, and began walking back towards her home down the street. Tenny watched her go, silently thanking God for sending Gift at just the right moment. Truly, Gift had been a gift in her life today. Balancing Femi on her hip, Tenny turned and began to walk back toward their own house, just a short distance away. The sky was turning a soft orange as evening approached, and a gentle breeze blew along the beautiful street. Femi, now calm and drowsy, twirled a tiny finger in a strand of his mother's hair, comforted by her closeness. As she walked, Tenny passed by Mama Ada's vegetable store again. The older woman had obliviously heard the news. War travels fast in Lagos. Mama Ada called out, Tenny, thank God though. We heard what happened. Take care of the pikin, oh, I beg. She waved cheerfully, relief evident on her face. Tenny offered a grateful smile. Thank you, Ma, I will. On an impulse, she added, Mama Ada, please give me some fresh ugu leaves. I have a soup to cook this evening. Mama Ada beamed, quickly bundling a handful of pumpkin leaves. She plucked the best of the bunch for Femi. When Tenny reached for her purse to pay, Mama Ada shook her head. No, take it, my dear. It's my little gift. We thank God for your boy's life. Emotion swelled up in Tenny again, but this time it was gratitude for the kindness around her. Thank you so much, Ma, she said, accepting the vegetables. She continued on her way home with her son in her arm and the greens in the other hand, reflecting on how supportive her community had been and how fortunate she was that tragedy had been averted. Soon, mother and son arrived at their front door. Tenny unlocked it and stepped inside their home, the scene of the morning chaos. But now, with the late sunlight slanting in and events of the day behind them, the house felt different. It felt like a fresh start. She set Femi down gently. The little boy, revived by a short rest on the walk home, toddled over to his box of toys in the living room. He pulled out a plastic pot and spoon, his favorite toys to bang together whenever he thought his mommy was cooking. Typically, the noise would have grated on Tenny's nerves, or she might have shushed him while scrolling her phone. But now, as Femi sat on the floor cheerfully clanging the pot and spoon, Tenny felt nothing but pure delight at the lively racket. Her child was safe, and being a normal, noisy 2-year-old, it was music to her ears. Looking at the spot on the couch, where she often sat glued to her phone, Tenny felt a wave of resolve. She walked over to the couch, found her phone in her pocket, and placed it deliberately on a high shelf. It will stay there for the rest of the evening, out of sight and out of mind. Instead of giving her attention to that advice, she had far more important things to focus on. Rolling up her sleeves, Tenny headed to the kitchen. She tied a checked apron around her waist and pulled out a pot and ingredients to make a proper dinner. This time, both hands and eyes were on the task, not on a phone. As she washed and chopped vegetables Mama Ada gave her, she sang a nursery rhyme loud enough for Femi to hear. From the living room, he babbled along in his toddler way and banged his spoon, contributing his own percussion to her song. Mother and son made a joyful duet of cooking sounds. Before long, the rich aroma of egusi soup with vegetables and smoked fish filled the house. A far cry from the bomb smell that morning. Tenny tasted the soup and smiled, satisfied. She also prepared a little sweet porridge for Femi, knowing he would need to eat early. Just as she set the table, she heard the familiar creak of the front door. Ola was home. The day had been so eventful. It was hard to believe it was only evening now. Tenny quickly wiped her hands and hurried to the door with Femi at her side, toddling fast on his short legs. Ola stepped in, looking a bit tired from work, but he immediately sensed something in the air. A delectable smell, a tidy home, and most surprisingly of all, his wife standing there looking directly at him, not a phone in sight. Their son holding her hand and bouncing happily. "Welcome home, darling," Tenny said, a warm, genuine smile on her face. Ola's eyes widened slightly, pleasantly taken aback by the greeting. "Thank you. It's good to be home," he replied, smiling. He scooped Femi up into his arms. The boy giggled and patted his father's cheeks. "Hey, my little man, you look happy. Have you been having fun with mommy today?" Femi gave a vigorous nod. "Mama, play," he announced proudly, pointing towards his toy. Then he sniffled and added, "Soup," which made both his parents laugh. "Yes, I smell it too," Ola chuckled, sniffing the air dramatically. "Smells like egusi soup with fish. Wow." He looked at Tenny with affectionate amazement. "You cooked?" Tenny blushed and nodded. "I did. A proper meal. And I porridge for Femi too. Come, let's eat while it's hot." She took Ola's briefcase from him to set aside. Tenny smiled, but her heart was pounding. She knew she had to tell him about the day's incident. Better he hear it from her now than from neighborhood gossip or the police letter. Clearing her throat gently, she said, "Ola, there is something I need to tell you about today." Her tone caught his attention. He set down his spoon. "What is it?" Tenny reached over to gently hold Femi's hand as he sat in his high chair happily, smearing porridge on his face. She then looked back at Ola, her eyes serious. "Something happened while I took Femi out this afternoon. Something bad, but it's okay now." Bit by bit, Tenny recounted the tale. How distracted she had been, how a strange woman touched Femi, how Gift intervened and chased the woman down, and the horrifying revelation and rescue that followed. As she spoke, her voice wavered and tears gathered in her eyes. Ola's face turned from concern to shock to anger and then to relief as the story unfolded. By the end, he was holding his head in his hands, trying to process it all. When Tenny finished, she whispered, "I am so sorry. You warned me, and I didn't listen. I took our son's safety for granted. I took your trust for granted, if not for Gifts. I shuddered to think." She choked up. Ola gently squeezed her hands. "Shh, it's okay. Femi is fine. That's what matters," he said softly. "You are fine. We are all fine. I promise you," Tenny continued earnestly. "From this moment on, I'm a changed woman. No more neglecting my family for gossip on Instagram or anything. I'll be the mother and wife you both deserve. I have learned my lesson, the hardest way imaginable." Ola studied her face, seeing the determination in her eyes. He had never had her speak with such resolve about this issue before. There was no defensiveness, no half-heartedness, just sincere conviction. It warmed his heart. "I can see that you mean it. he said, smiling gently. And that means the world to me. He then added with a playful glint. Although, I had to admit, the smell of that egusi soup already had me convinced something was different about you today. Then he let out a watery laugh, wiping her tears. Well, I nearly lost something precious. He tends to rearrange one's priorities pretty fast. She managed a small grin. I'm just grateful I didn't have to lose anything at all in the end. I'm unbelievably lucky and blessed. Ola nodded, pulling her into a side hall as they sat on the couch, watching Femi play on the floor. We are blessed, he agreed. He looked down at Tenny's pocket, where her phone was peeking out slightly. So, what about that? He asked casually, nodding at the device. Tenny followed his gaze. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the phone. For a moment, she looked at it silently. That little gadget that had ruled her life for so long, nearly to her ruin. Then, in a deliberate gesture, she powered it off completely and set it down on the coffee table. That can wait, she said firmly. It can wait for a long time. Right now, I just want to focus on my family. Ola broke into a broad smile. Those were the sweetest words he could hear. Now, this is my wife talking, he said happily. Welcome back, dear. He gave her a light kiss on the forehead. Just then, Femi tottered over to them, banging his little toy pot with a spoon. Eat, he chirped, scrunching his nose in a way that always made his parents laugh. The audio of the day was already forgotten in his young mind. He was just hungry now. Femi happily munched his soft porridge with a few spoons of the soup broth mixed in for flavor, while Ola practically sang praises over the egusi soup and how perfectly Tenny had prepared it. You have outdone yourself, love, he said, taking a second helping. If learning a lesson results in soup this delicious, maybe I should complain more often, he winked. Tenny laughed, a sound so bright, and Femi started laughing too. Though he didn't know why. Don't get used to it. I mean, the cause of it. But you can expect plenty of good dinners from now on, she replied. I plan to put as much effort into my home as I used to put into that phone, and then some. After dinner, with Femi nodding off in his high chair, exhausted from the day's excitement, Tenny gently picked him up and took him to bed. She followed their bedtime routine, one she had admittedly rushed through many times before. Tonight, she savored it. She told him a happy short story with a moral quietly echoing what she had learned, and then sang a soft lullaby while rocking him. Femi fell asleep, secure in his mother's arms and gaze. Laying him in his crib and tucking him in, Tenny placed one of his small stuffed animals next to him and watched his little chest rise and fall peacefully for a moment. Her heart swelled. This is everything, she thought. My child, my family, they are everything. Nothing on a screen could ever replace this. She knew that now, beyond a shadow of a doubt. She tiptoed out of Femi's room, where Ola was waiting by the door. Having cleaned up the dinner table in the meantime, he reached out and gave her a warm hug. I'm proud of you, Tenny, he whispered. Thank you, she whispered back, for believing I could be better. They went to their own bedroom to wind down for the night. Tenny's phone still lay powered off in the living room, forgotten. Instead of scrolling social media like she might have in the past, Tenny found herself eagerly discussing plans with Ola, plans for a family outing that weekend, without any devices, just them. Ideas for educational games to play with Femi, even some thoughts on perhaps starting a small business from home so she could manage her mind without being glued to gossip online. Ola listened enthusiastically. This was the engaged, thoughtful partner he always knew was there. Before turning in for the night, Tenny silently said a prayer of thanks for her son's safety, for the lessons she learned, and for the wonderful people like Gift who had helped. Not every mistake in life gives you the chance to correct it, but she had been given that chance and she wouldn't waste it. She also prayed for Peculiar. Yes, unbelievably she did. She prayed that the troubled woman would also find her way and never harm another child. It was a mark of how much Tenny had grown in the span of a single day. Her heart had become more vigilant and also more compassionate. As she snuggled into bed, Ola's arms around her, Tenny felt at peace. It had been one of the most terrifying days of her life, but it ended in safety, forgiveness, and a newfound resolve. She knew there was a saying, a word is enough for the wise. She smiled to herself in the darkness, thinking that in her case, it had taken an entire dramatic incident, practically a whole book of words, but in the end, she had become wiser. On the quiet streets in Lagos, under the watch of the moon, Tenny slept that night with a heart full of gratitude and determination. She had learned what it truly meant to be a mother, and she would never forget it. Parents must never take their children's safety and guidance for granted. Every child looks up to their parent for protection, love, and direction. Neglecting a child or failing to pay attention to their struggles can expose them to danger, bad influences, or even life-threatening situations. A parent's duty is not just to provide food and shelter, but to be present, vigilant, and intentional in raising their child. Children are like tender plants. Without care and watchfulness, they may wither or be destroyed by harmful hands. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Tenny and her family on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.